Have you ever sat across from someone and felt something before they said anything clear? Not because they raised their voice. Not because they admitted anything. Not because you had evidence you could neatly explain to someone else, and yet, something in you already knew. The room felt heavier. Your body became more alert. Their smile looked right but did not feel right. Their words were polite, but something underneath them felt restless. Withholding, irritated, or quietly controlling. No one really tells women this after 50, but many mature women stop listening only to words. They begin listening to energy, not in an exaggerated way, in a deeply human way, in a way shaped by life, relationships, disappointments, family roles, and years of noticing what people say compared to what they actually carry. And maybe you've felt this too. A husband says nothing is wrong, but the whole evening turns tense. A grown child sounds sweet, but something in you already knows the call will leave you feeling responsible. A friend arrives smiling, and yet within minutes you feel drained, careful, or strangely smaller. That is why instinct matters. And instinct becomes sharper when a woman stops treating her first feeling as foolish. Today, I want to walk you through these 6 ways to read energy before words. Not to make you suspicious, not to make you hard, but to help you trust what your deeper perception has been trying to show you for years. 1. Notice what happens in your body before your mind starts explaining the first way is this. Notice what happens in your body before your mind begins explaining it away. This matters more than many women realize. A lot of thoughtful, emotionally mature women have a habit of overriding their body very quickly. They feel tension but immediately try to be fair. They feel a knot in the stomach, but tell themselves not to overreact. They feel uneasy in someone's presence, but move straight into understanding that person instead of noticing what is happening inside themselves. But the body often registers emotional truth before the mind creates a polite story around it. If someone enters the room and your chest tightens, that matters. If a conversation begins and your shoulders tense, that matters. If a person speaks kindly, but you suddenly feel foggy, guilty, pressured, or subtly defensive, that matters too. Not because every single feeling is always correct, but because repeated feelings are information. A woman becomes wiser when she stops asking only, "What did they say?" and starts asking, "What happened inside me while they were saying it?" That is a different kind of intelligence. You may see this in ordinary family life. A daughter visits, speaks respectfully enough, but somehow the mother feels corrected the entire time. Nothing openly cruel is said. Yet afterward she feels strangely tired in her own home. Or a husband says all the reasonable things, but the wife's body stays guarded because she has lived long enough to know that tone and presence often tell the truth before language does. This is one of the first techniques to sharpen instinct. When you feel something in your body, do not rush to dismiss it. Pause. You do not have to obey the feeling blindly, but do not argue with it immediately either. Ask quietly, "What is my body reacting to here?" That question alone can save women years of self-doubt, because many women were taught to mistrust discomfort in themselves before they questioned discomfort in the room. And that training can make a woman leave her own body and live too much in explanation, but energy is often felt physically first, and a mature woman becomes stronger when she learns to stay with that first signal long enough to understand it. Second, watch the emotional aftermath, not just the conversation. The second way is this. Watch the emotional aftermath, not just the conversation itself. This is where a lot becomes clearer. Sometimes a conversation sounds normal while it is happening. You say the right things. They say the right things. Nothing obviously dramatic occurs. But afterward you feel off, you feel heavy, you feel responsible. You feel as though you owe something. You replay the exchange in your mind. You start adjusting your words afterward, even though you were only trying to be honest. You leave feeling like you somehow became the problem without ever seeing the exact moment it happened. That aftermath matters, because energy often reveals itself more clearly in what lingers than in what was spoken. A healthy interaction may be difficult, but it usually leaves a woman feeling clearer, even if it is emotional. Even if it is uncomfortable, there is often something clean about it, something honest, something that does not require her to keep shrinking, second-guessing, or carrying the emotional burden long after the conversation is over, but manipulative, emotionally immature, Or one-sided interactions often leave residue. That residue is worth noticing. A woman may talk to a grown child for 15 minutes and then spend the next 3 hours feeling guilty. She may have lunch with a friend and leave feeling as though she disappeared the whole time. She may speak honestly in marriage and somehow end up feeling like she was too harsh for simply naming what hurt her. This is one of the quiet truths mature women learn. The emotional effect of an interaction often tells you more than the polished language inside it. So here is a technique that sharpens instinct. After an important interaction, ask yourself what stayed with me. Did peace stay with you? Or pressure? Did clarity stay with you? Or confusion? Did self-respect stay with you? Or the urge to explain yourself again? That question is powerful because many women spend too much time analyzing other people's intention and not enough time noticing their own emotional aftermath, and no one really talks about how telling that aftermath can be because people who carry hidden resentment, emotional manipulation, quiet blame, or unspoken demands often leave traces behind them. Not always by design. Sometimes they do it unconsciously, but the effect is still real. Their words end, but their energy keeps sitting in the room. A mature woman sharpens her instinct when she stops ignoring that residue. Not every uncomfortable feeling means danger. But repeated emotional residue is rarely meaningless. Third, listen for what is missing, not just what is said. The third way is this. Listen for what is missing, not just what is said. This becomes especially important with age, because mature women begin to hear absences more clearly. A person may say, "Of course I care about you," but never ask a real question about your inner life. A child may say, "I've just been busy," but the warmth, effort, and curiosity have quietly disappeared. A partner may say all the practical things, but there is no tenderness in the room. A friend may sound affectionate, but there is no space in the relationship for your truth unless it is easy and convenient. Words can cover a lot, but missing things speak too. Missing accountability, missing curiosity, missing softness, missing reciprocity, missing emotional presence, missing the sense that the other person is actually with you rather than managing the conversation. And maybe this is one of the saddest forms of wisdom. A woman reaches a point where she no longer listens only for promises. She listens for absence. She hears what people avoid. She notices what never comes. She feels the gap between the words and the actual emotional offering. That kind of listening becomes sharp because life teaches it. A woman who has lived through emotional neglect often becomes sensitive to what is not being given. A woman who has spent years carrying family relationships often becomes fluent in silence, avoidance, deflection, and emotional omission. She learns that people do not only reveal themselves in what they express, they reveal themselves in what they consistently leave out. So a strong technique here is this. When someone speaks, do not only ask whether their words sound kind. Ask whether the emotional substance is present. Is there accountability? Is there care? Is there room for you? Is there any sign they are truly meeting what is happening? Or are you being asked once again to build the emotional meaning of the conversation by yourself? That question matters because many women are excellent at filling in what is missing. They supply the understanding. They supply the patience. They supply the emotional completion. And after years of doing that, they can mistake their own emotional labor for mutual connection. But mutuality has a different feeling. It does not leave a woman doing all the emotional translating. It does not leave her lonely in conversations that look normal from the outside. It does not leave her wondering why she feels unseen when technically nothing went wrong. If this resonates with you, you're not alone. Many women have spent years apologizing for instincts that were actually quietly accurate. And if you enjoy this kind of calm, thoughtful reflection, you may consider subscribing. There is something healing about finally naming the signals women have been taught to doubt. Because once a woman learns to notice what happens in her body, what lingers after an interaction, and what is quietly missing beneath the words, her instinct begins to sharpen in a very different way, not louder, clearer. By this point, a woman has already started sharpening something very important. She is noticing what happens in her body before her mind explains it away. She is watching the emotional aftermath of conversations, not just the words themselves, and she is learning to hear what is missing, not just what is being said. That alone changes a great deal. Because once a woman begins trusting those quieter signals, she no longer depends only on direct proof. She starts recognizing emotional truth with a different kind of clarity. And now we go deeper. Fourth, watch who makes you carry the emotional weight. The fourth way is this: watch who makes you carry the emotional weight. This is one of the clearest ways to read energy before words, because energy often reveals itself through distribution. Who is carrying the honesty? Who is carrying the tension? Who is carrying the repair? Who is carrying the burden of keeping the conversation human, balanced, and emotionally real? In many relationships, one person speaks, but the other person carries the emotional labor of what is happening. A mature woman may sit with a husband who says very little, yet somehow she feels responsible for making the atmosphere easier. She may talk to an adult child who sounds casual enough, but by the end she is the one softening, adjusting, and making sure nothing becomes too much. She may sit with a friend who talks openly about their own pain, but when the woman herself tries to speak honestly, the room grows subtly impatient, distracted, or uncomfortable. That tells you something, because healthy energy does not leave one person doing all the emotional lifting. This is especially important for women who have spent years in families where they were praised for being the strong one, the understanding one, or the one who keeps everyone together. Over time, that role becomes so normal that they stop noticing how uneven the emotional burden really is, but no one really talks about how exhausting it is to always be the one carrying the invisible part of the interaction, carrying the mood, carrying the silence, carrying the tact, carrying the emotional maturity, carrying the truth in a form everyone else can tolerate. And maybe you felt this too. You leave a room not because anyone attacked you, but because somehow you did all the emotional work required to keep it stable. That is not nothing. That is information. A strong technique here is to ask yourself after a meaningful interaction: who carried the emotional weight? Did both people make room for reality? Or did you do most of the absorbing, translating, softening, and understanding? If the answer is almost always you, your instinct is not imagining something. It is reading an imbalance. And mature women often sense this imbalance much faster, because they have lived long enough to know that emotional exhaustion is rarely random. It usually points to a pattern. Fifth, notice the difference between warmth and safety. The fifth way is this: notice the difference between warmth and safety. This is a very important distinction, especially for women who have spent much of their lives being soothed by appearances. Some people know how to sound warm. They know how to smile. They know how to say affectionate things. They know how to create moments that feel familiar, sentimental, even loving. But warmth and safety are not the same thing. A person can be warm and still be emotionally unsafe. A person can sound caring and still leave you confused. A person can be charming and still make your nervous system brace. A person can speak lovingly and still punish honesty, avoid accountability, or make your truth feel inconvenient. This is why mature women often become less impressed by surface warmth as they age. They have seen too much. They have seen warmth that disappears the moment boundaries appear. Warmth that is present only when access is wanted. Warmth that creates closeness on the surface while avoiding depth underneath. Warmth that soothes just enough to keep a woman engaged but not enough to let her truly rest. That is not safety. Safety has a different feeling. Safety allows honesty. Safety does not punish truth with withdrawal, guilt, or confusion. Safety does not make a woman feel she must manage her tone carefully just to be heard fairly. Safety does not leave her regretting her openness afterward. And this becomes especially painful in later life, because many women begin noticing that some of the people they loved most were warm in certain ways, but not safe in the ways that mattered most. A grown child may still be affectionate but not emotionally available. A spouse may still be dependable in practical life, but not safe for deeper vulnerability. A longtime friend may still be kind in social settings, but not safe for grief, disappointment, or real truth. That realization can hurt because it forces a woman to admit that some relationships felt closer than they truly were. But it is a quiet truth worth facing. A technique that sharpens instinct here is to ask, do I feel free here, or merely comforted for a moment? Because momentary comfort can hide deeper instability. Real safety leaves a woman more herself, not less. And once she learns the difference, she stops confusing pleasant energy with trustworthy energy. Last but not least, trust patterns more than promises. The sixth way is this: trust patterns more than promises. This may be the clearest instinct sharpened by age. When women are younger, many still hope words will eventually become reality. They want to be fair. They want to believe. They want to allow for growth, stress, misunderstanding, bad timing, woundedness, and complexity. And all of that has value. But later in life, many women begin to understand something more grounded. Patterns tell the truth more consistently than promises ever do. A person may promise to change. Promise to call. Promise to be more thoughtful. Promise to stop doing the very thing that keeps hurting you. Promise that this time is different. But if the emotional pattern stays the same, your instinct should listen to the pattern. Because energy has repetition in it. The same defensiveness. The same guilt shift. The same withdrawal. The same self-pity. The same emotional absence. The same way of making your truth feel heavier than their behavior. And mature women often read this faster because they have already paid the price of ignoring repeated patterns. Before they know what it costs to keep calling something new when it feels painfully familiar, they know what it costs to keep waiting for consistency from people who only offer intensity, regret, or temporary warmth. They know what it costs to keep betraying their own pattern recognition in the name of patience. This is why wisdom in later life can look quieter. A woman hears the promise, but she watches the pattern. She listens politely, but she believes what repeats. She may not argue. She may not even explain much, but inwardly, she begins making decisions based on structure, not sentiment. That is not bitterness. That is earned clarity. And maybe this is one of the strongest forms of instinct a woman can develop. The ability to say, I do not need one more explanation. I need to honor what has already been shown to me repeatedly. A very practical technique here is simple. When confused by someone's words, ask yourself, what has this pattern taught me so far? Not what do I hope? Not what did they say today? Not what would be nicest to believe? What has the pattern actually taught me? That question protects dignity and it protects time, which many women value more deeply as they grow older. Not because they love less, but because they can no longer afford the emotional cost of pretending repeated hurt is still unclear. If this resonates with you, you're not alone. Many women reach a stage of life where they realize their instinct was never the problem. The problem was how often they were taught to dismiss it. You can share your thoughts in the comments, because these are the kinds of quiet truths women often carry for years before hearing them spoken clearly. And if you enjoy this kind of calm, reflective conversation, you may consider subscribing. There is something powerful about naming the emotional realities that so often remain invisible. So if we gather all 6 ways together, this is what they really teach. Notice your body. Watch the residue. Hear what is missing. See who makes you carry the weight. Learn the difference between warmth and safety. And trust patterns more than promises. That is how instinct sharpens. Not into fear, into clarity.